Fola-Alade OFR was a man of many firsts. He was that architect who distinctly married different building forms, motifs, symbols, reflecting hints of native architecture at every opportunity, incorporating courtyards, circular forms, arcs, ethnic motifs in all of his designs. He practically adopted his creative design ideas and concepts synonymous with traditional architecture in sub-Saharan Africa. They were typically not similar to those from where he was raised, but appeared to be more likely what he became enticed and experimented with, and then picked up from various communities during his sojourn to Zaria, where he acquired his architectural educational training. He used the signature architectural styles and concepts for functionality and to enhance his designs. The circle is a universal symbol with extensive meaning. It represents the notions of totality, wholeness, original perfection, the self, the infinite, eternity, timelessness, all cyclic movement, and to some, the Almighty God. It was Hermes Trismegistus who said, God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. Anyone that knew Fola-Alade would tell you that he was a practical and down-to-earth individual and more likely to look at circles from their functionality. After all, circular buildings are more aerodynamic as air freely flows around while outside air is effectively kept out, which is good for insulation. Also, a circular building means a house occupies less surface area, hence fewer amounts of building materials required for it. In the circle, there are no weaker regions and the limiting perimeter is minimal at the protected area of volume. The towers of a castle are more often than not circular. This surface shape offers more options of reflection of any non-perpendicular stroke. Several architects have used the strength of the circle while manipulating its appearance. The circle is the strongest two-dimensional shape. So is the use of semicircular arcs in architecture, and that characterized the architecture of Fola-Alade. Throughout history, there have been periods of time when nations had ideological leaders who expressed their visions positively or negatively through their architecture. Nazi Germany of the 1930s and early 40s, Adolf Hitler had Albert Speer, and in Brazil, Juscelino Kubitschek had Oscar Niemeyer. In Nigeria, Obasanjo had Fola-Alade, and his creative use of native architecture led him to become the first architect that was appointed as a federal permanent secretary in 1976 and the first architect to bag the national honors of the Office of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, OFR, in 1979. Fola-Alade worked very closely with the then General Olusegun Obasanjo during his period as a military head of state, and the relationship metamorphosed into mutual admiration and friendship. Here, architect Yinka Williams on the man Fola-Alade.
Well, I am one of the 5 children of architect Fola-Alade. I'm the eldest of the 5, and I'm an architect. Well, interestingly, 5 of us and many more cousins and relatives were raised by our dad, and it really had nothing to do with him wanting us to be or us trying to be like him. I think what helps is that, we saw that we had a first-hand experience living and waking up to see an architect at work, go to work. We went to his office, we went to sites with him. We did a lot with him, and I think all of us took an interest in his work because we always wanted to go out with him, and we saw a lot. We saw him working at home, and he also didn't mind what you chose to study. Whatever you chose to study, make sure you do your best with it. You put in your best, try and come up with the best you can, and he'll be proud of you. As a father, well, he was a very, very interesting father to have. Almost all my friends took him as their father because he was somebody who attracted a lot of people around him. He was a people person, he was a people lover. He liked all his children's friends. He was a village friend. He was friends to anyone and everyone. And, it wasn't difficult to grow up with such a father. Yes, he was a busy man, but he created time for us. He was quite an interesting father from day one. He loved recreation, he loved to play, he loved you to be good in your schoolwork, so he'll give you all the support you needed for that. He encouraged you to do very well in school. If you didn't do well, that was going to be a problem. He gave us a sense of you had to be well behaved. You had to, so it's not just about going to school and being knowledgeable academically. You had to be well behaved. You had to understand a lot of things about life, and we learned all that from him as our father. And so he was quite the father that, fitted us. We could have derailed. Our parents raised us to be a lot of things, particularly to be educated, and therefore you become independent, and then you can be useful to yourself and the society and what have you. So I'm glad I had that upbringing from Dad. And we had a father who was a fun-loving father, very, very playful, like I said, very humorous. He had a great sense of humor. He was a funny man, he was a party man, he was everything. He was almost like you. So, he put himself in that. We could come up to him, we could ask any questions. And he made our childhood very interesting and gave us a lot of opportunities to see a lot of things. How did I start to see him as a father and a mentor and a boss? I'll say from when I was in primary school. It was before our mom passed. He took us all to Plaza Cinema to see the movie, The Towering Inferno. We didn't even know what we were going to be then. But what he wanted us to learn from that was a very, very big architect in the movie had built a high-rise, I believe, in New York. And I think on the day of the commissioning of the building, the high-rise building caught fire. Many people died. We saw how distressed the architect was in it, and that really touched him. And, he touched him so much that he took the whole family, my mom, all the children, to watch the movie? Well, for us, it was like watching a movie. But I think that was the first time I could see from the lenses of an architect. I must have been about 11, 12 years old then. And then thereafter, I would go to sites with him, would go to his office. So we grew up to see a father who was a hands-on father and also a practical professional that we could see at home. You know, it wasn't just called an architect, we saw him being an architect. Okay. Isaac Fola-Alade was born on the 24th of November 1933 in his native hometown in Aramoko, Ekiti. His parents had no formal education and he lost his dad at the tender age of 9. He had to take up a job as a houseboy to his beloved teacher, Canon Leslie Donald Mason, while he attended Christ School at Ekiti, in order to earn a living just enough to pay for his secondary school education. He worked for a while in Ibadan following the completion of his secondary school in 1951. He also attended the Nigerian College of Arts, Science and Technology in Ibadan. One day he observed a gentleman on a construction site dressed in a pair of shorts and short-sleeved shirt, and upon inquiry, he was informed that the man was an architect. That was the first time he had ever heard of an architect. He simply admired the architect's informal manner of dressing. This was most unlike the traditional suit and tie work dress format of those days. Fola-Alade then studied architecture at the Nigerian College of Arts, Science and Technology, now Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, from 1957, and was one of the first 4 architecture graduates produced in West Africa in 1961. While at Zaria, he obtained the Inter-RIBA, D-Arc, and the RIBA Part 2. He won the Atlas Award for the Best Academic Performance in Zaria in 1958 and completed his studies in 1965 at the Postgraduate School of Tropical Architecture at the Architectural Association School, London, on a Commonwealth Scholarship under the famous Emeritus Professor Otto Koenigsberger, who was then the world's leading authority on tropical architecture. One of his classmates at the AA was the late Professor Frederick Schroedfeger, who lived and taught at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Another contemporary of his at the AA school is architect Dr. Lanre Tauri-Coker. Fola-Alade became a chartered architect and a member of the Royal Institute of British Architects in 1963, the Nigerian Institute of Architects in 1964, the Royal Society of Health of the UK in 1965, and the Architects Registration Council of Nigeria in 1970. He became a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Architects in 1993. Despite his humble beginnings, he was the first citizen of Aramoko and the second Ekiti man to become a chartered architect, the first being architect Adedokun Adeyemi from Iyi, Ekiti. Fola-Alade was the 12th architect registered to practice in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. His registration number was F12. He was appointed the first registrar of Archon during an extremely hectic period in his career, as he combined this with his duties as the chief architect of the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, and within the same period, he was also appointed the General Secretary of the Commonwealth Architects Conference, held in Lagos in March 1969. Fola-Alade commenced his professional career as a pupil architect in the then western region of Nigeria from 1961. He was the resident architect on Adeyemi College of Education, Ondo, and Comprehensive High School, Ado-Ekiti, both in the old western state. He became the area project architect for Ondo and Oyo provinces from 1965 to 67 upon his return from his postgraduate studies. He relocated his family from Ibadan to Lagos in 1967 and first worked as the senior architect for Lagos City Council between 1967 and 68. He joined the Federal Civil Service in 1968 as the principal project architect at the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing from 1968 to 72. He became chief architect between 72 and 75. He was the architect in charge of the supervision of the construction of the National Stadium Complex in Surulere in readiness for the second All-African Games in 1973. Fola-Alade was the chief project architect of the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, responsible for the design, tendering and construction stages of the Federal Secretariat in Ikoyi from 1973 to 75. He was appointed Director of Public Buildings between 1975 and 76, and in March 1976 he became the Permanent Secretary for Special Duties for the Armed Forces Development Projects from November 1976 to September 1979, during which he executed several projects, and just to mention a few, they include the Ministry of External Affairs Marina, several military projects including hospitals such as the Creek Hospital in Ikoyi, many army barracks, Jordan Barracks inclusive, cantonments, schools such as Federal Government College Ijanike, residential estates including Satellite Town, Navy Town, Barbie Towers, the design of which was later replicated as Molina Towers, Creek Hospital Towers, Awolowo Road Towers behind NTA, and Eric Moore Towers in Surulere. He designed the prestigious Federal Government Guest House in Victoria Island at the time in readiness for the proposed visit of Queen Elizabeth II and President Jimmy Carter. He designed and built the prototype secretariats in the 19 state capitals, the National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies in Kuru, Plateau State, and the National Cenotaph and Remembrance Arcade in Tafawa Balewa Square, Lagos. He designed the Nigerian Embassy Consulate in 9 countries, including the Republic of Benin, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Senegal, Zambia, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Botswana, Cameroon, Italy, Pakistan, Germany, China, and Brazil. He was a technical advisor for the master planning of the new Nigerian universities between 1975 and 77 and the Nigerian Judicial Institute in Abuja. He did the designs of those only. He retired voluntarily from the Federal Civil Service on the 30th of September 1979, following a meritorious service to his beloved country. There was no doubt that he had a penchant for his noble profession, and he had no misgivings about being a very proud Nigerian architect. His work spanning across 5 decades distinctly marked his characteristic native architectural styles and signature, which took him to far-reaching parts of the world, both as a professional and as a delegate for his country, during which he met many greats of his time. Following his retirement, Fola-Alade established his firm, Fola-Alade Associates, in January 1980 to provide services in architecture and project management consultancy, through which he used his wealth of experience to further express his love for architecture on many more impactful projects for his cherished country. Notable of them are the Federal Secretariat Plot 4 in the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja, depicted as Fola-Alade prototype design. The design commenced in 1986. He was the architect and project manager responsible for the design of the West African Portland Cement head office, now known as the Lagos Revenue House at Alausa. He designed this from 1987 to 1992. Fola-Alade was a prolific writer. He wrote many articles that were published in the national dailies and magazines on just about any topic besides architecture. He wrote and typed the manuscript of his own autobiography in 2005 titled Remember Whose Son Thou Art. He was a well-sought-after local and international public speaker who presented papers at several conferences. He He also bagged several national and international awards, including a DSc Honours from the great Obafemi Awolowo University in Ile-Ife, where he received an honorary doctorate degree in architecture in 2004. He was the first architect to bag the title of the Officer of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, his well-cherished OFR. He served his country well into his twilight years. He was appointed the Pro-Chancellor and Chairman Governing Council of the Federal University of Port Harcourt in 1990 and Pro-Chancellor of Ekiti State University in 2002. Architect Fola-Alade OFR was that man who loved his leisure. He was a very active sportsman all through his life, from excelling in the soccer team at Christ School at Ekiti to his days of lawn tennis at Zaria and in Ibadan. He had a most infectious love for swimming, an amazing passion for squash racket and badminton. He lived a glorious golfing life. He contributed to the development of sports in Nigeria and served on the Squash Rackets Association of Nigeria. He was a very good table tennis and cricket player. He enjoyed a variety of board games. One of his favorite pastimes was playing billiards and snooker. He learned to speak a bit of French at the Alliance Francaise, if only to get him by on his jobs at the Francophone countries. He learned to use the AutoCAD from 1990. He learned to play the piano while at primary school. He loved his music until the end of his life. Fola-Alade died on the 18th of June 2021 at the age of 87.
Architect Fola-Alade's typical designs are characterized by his unique style and signature, depicting simplicity with his straight lines often translating into curves and circles, exhibiting his love for exploring interesting forms in his designs, while also adapting to what he described as native architecture and adopting motifs, forms, character, traditional concepts of the diverse Nigerian cultures. A very proud Nigerian who really valued his heritage, he was a strong proponent of the Nigerian traditional architecture, which he exhibited in his designs at every given opportunity.